Thank you for joining me today on Good News with Twanda Black, where we're discovering some of the most inspiring trials to triumph stories and empowerment moments. Call up a friend and let them know it's time for some good news.
Welcome to Good News with Twanda Black. I am your host, and we talk with folks from all walks of life about their good news, because ultimately, if our sisters and brothers are doing well, we should celebrate. Sit back, relax, and enjoy this next guest. He is the great-great-grandson of former slaves from the brutal cotton fields of the Belvedere Plantation in Eutawville, South Carolina. He's also a plaintiff of the Texaco Racial Discrimination Lawsuit. He's a previous director of Homeland Security and Emergency Services. He's an author and publisher, and he was a write-in candidate in 2020 for the President of the United States. Now, we're here to talk about his book because his book kind of encompasses all of that. And the name of the book is They Chose Barabbas and All Hell Broke Loose. Please welcome Dr. Peter W. Sherill. How are you today, sir?
I am fine, thank you. I couldn't have did a better introduction myself.
Absolutely not.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Oh my gosh. So when I got the book, I just thought, okay, he's going to be talking about, free Barabbas and all that. And I started reading. I was like, wow.
Yeah.
Very in-depth. This is a political look at what's been happening historically, what's been happening in the Obama campaign. It really, it encompasses so much. So talk about why you decided to write this book and when did you write it?
Okay. I decided to write the book. Well, I'll just give a little backstory. I was at the point where I was like, I'm not writing any more stories until you read the last one. Mm-hmm. Okay. And so that's where I was as far as writing. But it seems like every 4 to 5 years, God compels me to write again. And so the day after the 2024 election, when I got the phone call from my daughter, she will be 29 in June. She was enraged.
Yeah.
She was on fire. And she was like, what does this actually mean? How do you know what did this happen? I can't believe it. And I was like, wow, I felt it. But here coming from my daughter.
Yeah. Our future.
I took that deep to heart. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I'm getting ready to write another book.
Wow.
And that's when I decided to write this. So I began exploring, my process that I go through in writing, basically right after the election. I was shooting to have this earlier, but I kind of delegated some of the responsibilities as a publisher out. And, the younger generation, they understand this social media and all these different platforms. It's like, oh, I can do the audio, I can do the ebook, I can do the print book, I can do this, and I'm gonna put it on that. And I was like, you know what? Here's my baby, you take it. So it took a little bit of time, but I've been very pleased with the outcome, even though it's a little bit.
I had to chuckle, Dr. Sherill, because I said, oh, he didn't even make it through the first 100 days. So I know it's a part 2 to this book right here.
When I was composing this, I have at least 44 chapters.
Okay.
I was like, oh man, I was like, I'm not going to sit here and write all 44 chapters, but you're probably right. And if you read the subtitle, and all hell broke loose.
Yes, and Lord, that's the truth.
Oh my goodness. You see firsthand what this meant. And I decided to explore how could this country, after what we went through in 2016,
Exactly.
And all the things we went through in 2020.
But look,
how did not only re-elect this man, but after all the charges and
what had happened was, okay, because I got questions for you. So,
yes,
you were a diehard Democrat.
I was a hard Democrat.
Diehard. You left the Democratic Party and went to the Republican Party. So talk about that for a moment. What happened in that process for you? Yeah. I read about it, but tell the audience.
Okay. Yes. Oh, absolutely. It really started after I reached the total exploitation of our infamous Black leaders, Jesse Jackson, Al Sharpton, when I was in the middle of the Texaco Discrimination Lawsuit. And then came Val Patrick as this hero for the diversity champion Texaco, and he was in charge of the diversity task force, and they took $35 million off the top of the lawsuit and gave it to the task force. And then 1 year after that, he became Texaco corporate counsel in charge of all the lawyers for the entire corporation. And I was like, I can't believe that there wasn't someone else that he could have recommended or that could have found to become a counsel for the company.
Such a conflict. Yeah, such a conflict. But I mean, remind people about the suit, because I can tell you right now, from that day, and I interviewed somebody who wrote a book about it, and I can't remember the lady who
Barry Roberts. Barry Roberts was the lady.
I interviewed her, and from that day on, I have never stopped at a Texaco station. That's remember. Right. That's my own personal protest. But talk about that, because a lot of folks don't know about it or they forgot about it.
Oh yeah, they definitely forgot about it. That actually catapulted. I never intended to be an author. I didn't know the first thing about writing a book. I used to walk around Texaco and say, one day I'm gonna write a book about this lawsuit, but they're not gonna be what people think. And then one day, I just got tired of people asking me, did we win? And I said, I'm gonna write a book about it.
Yeah.
And I sat down and began to try to figure out how to write a book. And then because of the content of the book, I had to figure out how to publish it myself.
Yeah.
Because self-publishing companies wouldn't even publish it.
Exactly.
It was really serious, and it was really deep, and it was very emotionally charged.
Salacious, all of that. Yeah.
And it's interesting because everything that I write is kind of like in that historic theologic component. Because when you're fighting a battle like against Texaco, a racial discrimination battle, it's like David fighting Goliath. I call that my David versus Goliath story. Okay. I had my little rock, put it in my slingshot, and I took Goliath's head off. But, the bigger thing was the disconnect with our Black leaders.
Yeah.
And as I, began to reflect on it, and I won't say that compelled me to leave the party. The real honest truth is that as I, something happens when you turn 50, you realize that you don't have a whole bunch of time left.
Definitely. Yeah.
You're on the other side of the clock. I don't care what you say. But Absolutely. Anyway, I decided to get my spiritual life in order. And so as I was looking at things and as I was growing spiritually, I actually got a revelation, or as I come to know, a revelation knowledge. And it challenged me. And I ran for mayor in my city of as many know, as money earning Mount Vernon. And I looked around and I was like, man, all I see is crime, murder, drugs. And one day the bishop said, how can you call yourself a child of the Most High God and you sit and you watch? convicted me to my core. And I said, you know what? It's time to take a stance. Yeah. And I remember I was watching Creflo, because I was watching Creflo a lot, and Creflo Dollar, for those who might not know. But anyway, very, very inspirational in certain aspects of life.
Pastor Creflo Dollar, yes.
Yes,
sir.
Pastor Creflo Dollar. Oh yeah, you'll know him in the ATL. And I heard God tell me after I ran for mayor and didn't win, he was like, you really need to change parties. And I was like, what? I was like, I'll never be a traitor. I'll never sell out my people. And then I said, I'm a Democrat till I die. And then I said, whoa, time out. And this was in 2011. So this is way before all this Trump stuff. I was very disappointed in Obama for many reasons, but I was pleased that the country elected a African American as president. But, you know, they put the safeguards in to make sure that the House and the Senate stayed the same, Republicans. So, you know, it's like, yeah, you got a black president, but Joe, guess what?
But it was going to be a fight all the way to the end.
All the way to the end. And I just thought he could have did a little bit more. And so, as I looked around, and you looked around most of the Democratic cities, most of them are challenged, and education is a big thing for me. School systems are failing. And basically with the school system failing, that's just a high school to prison pipeline. And, you know, I'm very big on literacy. The stats that I ran across while we was doing our literacy campaign, it's unbelievable where this country is and where we are as a people in education. It's almost
scary. Yeah, scary.
It's scary. And so I stepped out on faith, and I'm gonna tell you, being from around the way, I was like, this is probably one of the most dangerous things that I could ever think of doing. And it was like, I wrote in my second book, the first book about the Texaco Racial Discrimination is called Black to the Future, from the plantation to the corporation. And then my next book that I was compelled to write about 4 years later was called Exodus, why I became a Republican. And I was sharing what happened to me spiritually that made me make this change. And I had to stop when I said, I'm a Democrat till I die. I was like, hold up.
Because look, you might have been taking yourself out with them words.
Yeah, right? You know, guys, like, you're not going to listen to me, young man? Are you going to listen to me? I was in tune enough to know that God was talking to me. And I asked a question in Exodus, and I said, what does a man do when God tells him to do something that goes against everything that he's ever believed in? And it was like, you got a choice. And I call this my Jonah going to Nineveh story. For those who don't know the Jonah, go look it up. You need to look it up. You need to know the story, you know. But anyway, I'll give you a short version. God told Jonah to go to Nineveh. God speaks to people, so don't think I was bugging when I say God was speaking to me. So God told Jonah to go to Nineveh. Jonah said, I don't think so.
Nineveh, right?
Nineveh was wilder than Sodom and Gomorrah.
Right.
And Jonah was like,
oh, he went the whole other way. He went the whole other direction.
Jonah was like, bro. He's like, nah, man, I am not going to Nineveh. And you'll learn something. When God tell you to do something, you can do it the easy way, or you can do it the hard way.
That's
At the end of the day, you're going to Nineveh. You will find yourself in Nineveh, and you'll find yourself doing what God told you to do.
Yeah.
And then the next thing God told me to do was to run for president. And I said, man, how about Congress? He said, no. I told you president. And I was like, you have got to be kidding me. I was like, man, I'm not even qualified. Now, I graduated in 1980. 35 years later, I find myself in a graduate program, in a master's program for public administration. I was like, public administration? I'm a business major. I know business administration, but I have no idea what public administration really was all about. In the first day of class, I sat there, and that was about in 2012, because I graduated in 2015, if I'm not mistaken. But it was 35 years after I graduated undergrad. 35 years. Right. And the first day of class, and I had a black professor, young, black, energetic, intelligent professor. He was great, Dr. Oliver. Incredible. I mean, sharp. Oh man, it was like, wow, this is beautiful. And the first day of class was sitting there, and he put a pie chart of the entire government body budget, mandatory versus discretionary spending. I was like, man, that is just what I needed to understand what you need to do when you run for president.
That's right.
I was like, and I'm an economics major in undergrad. And I was like, oh man, I just looked up and I just said, wow, thank you. And I knew I was doing what God had called me to do. And so I went ahead and I pursued it. And the irony of it is that although I did not win, all of a sudden I seeking these connections with people from the motherland who were excited, ecstatic. I was like, but you can't vote for me. And it was like, man, there's a bishop in Sierra Leone. He has a school and he has an orphanage. The kids, he audio to me with the kids praying for me to be successful and win. I was like, you know what? This is beautiful. And I began meeting people all over the continent. And now, I mean, let's face it, I ain't know hardly any of the countries. I know almost all the countries, and I know many leaders. And now I'm working on humanitarian projects for the Congo, for Guinea, for Sierra Leone. It's like, I know people in the continents now, all because I stepped out and did what God told me to do, no matter how controversial and crazy people thought I was.
But God was putting you in position.
Yeah.
Where you are today. Yeah. So look, we could talk about that all day.
Yes.
I need to touch on a little bit about this book.
Yes, definitely.
So you talked about Kamala.
Yes.
We ain't gonna talk about that because there's one thing I want to ask you because we already been talking too long. You talked about why you became a Republican. You talked about Malcolm versus Martin.
Yes.
Really good chapter. Here's the chapter that I want to talk about. And I think Black America wants to know. Why did the Latino people vote for Trump when he called them dogs and pigs and rapists and murder? And he said everything he wanted. He told them how I feel about you, but yet they still went and voted for him. Talk about that. I thought that was such
overwhelmingly.
Yes.
Overwhelmingly.
We don't understand what happened. How could you hear that? And I was talking to a Latino woman, and she said, but he wasn't talking about us. I was like, well, wait, how was he not talking about you? Well, I guess because they think because they have arrived and got a little bit of money or whatever. I don't know. This lady was kind of well off because her husband had a nice and she said he wasn't talking about her. Yet when she came back to my office, her husband was being deported and she was in tears.
I unfortunately, and I probably shouldn't say this, but
don't say it.
Okay, I won't say.
Be nice.
I will come from an intellectual perspective, which I didn't do guys in.
Talk about them numbers in the book because that was the most interesting chapter to me. Acculturation
versus acculturation/assimilation.
Right.
They do not go through or identify with
us, with our struggle. That thing hit me like a brick when I read that. I was like, dang, okay.
You know, they not only and see, it's this sexist female cultural life that they live, basically with the degradation of women, and they believe that women are supposed to act a certain way, be a certain way, and woman is not supposed to be in charge of anything, especially not in government.
Yeah.
And so you'll find that usually in the past elections in 16 and 20, overall 30% voted. They voted 30% as a block of votes. In this election, 37 to 38% of the Latino women voted Republican and for Donald Trump. 47 to 48% of the men voted for Donald Trump. And if you can, and I've been like explaining this to people and breaking it down. If you got to look at their number overall as a quote unquote, I don't like this word, as a minority, but you know, they are now, you know, the lead minority group, and you know, they take great pride in that, and they don't even realize it's really insulting in a certain manner of speaking. But they are over like 61, maybe close to 62 million. We, on the other hand, are like at about 41, 42 million, somewhere around that vicinity, as far as a group. And so when you take those numbers, and even if you just take half of, the men, and say 30 million, and say you take, because not all 30 million of that population can vote, it might be too young, whatever reasons. Say you take 50% of that number, and now you kind of have it down to about maybe 15 million. And if you 48%, if you take 48% of 15 million votes, basically 50, you're looking at 7.5 million people who voted, Hispanics who voted for Donald Trump. That's just the male.
Right,
that's
just the male. Yeah.
You know, 7.5, can you imagine the 7.5 million votes that could have went to Kamala? The election would have been a landslide. That's just the male population.
Right. And you also address why the black male population increased in voting for Trump in this last election too. Yes.
You know, and I did the same kind of formula mathematically, and I'm saying like I might somewhere around 2.5 million after you figure, because black men, we make up about 41 million as a race. So if you take half of that, which is the male, they're about 50%, you're looking at 20 million. So I'm like, okay, let's just discard that 50% of that because of all the other situations and circumstances in society that we are afflicted with and oppressed by, etc. In spite
felonies, this, that, and the other.
Yeah, exactly. So now you're looking at maybe 10 million.
8 to 10
that had the right to vote. So you're looking at close to 24%. I just rounded up 25%. 25% of 10 million is 2.5 million. Between the Latinos and the black male, you are looking at approximately easily 10 million votes.
Wow.
That did not go for Kamala. And I just, I know you said you wanted to skip that chapter, but that chapter was very important to me about Kamala because, I know she was devastated.
And I like how you, as an individual, apologize to Kamala Harris for not doing your part.
Yes,
making sure that she,
because I understand.
You apologize to her several times in that chapter.
Because I know what it takes to go up against these strongholds and principalities.
Yeah.
And I kept saying, I'm going to intercede, and I'm going to, because that's how you win the war. This is spiritual warfare. That's how you win it. And I kept saying, I'm going to intercede. And I was like, you know what? There's just no way. This should be a landslide victory. I just knew that this was going to be a landslide victory. Not only was it not, it was over before the night was done.
Right.
And it was like, I could not believe it. And it was like, there's no way. But I watched how their communications and their PR was attacking her viciously.
Oh yeah.
And they did not have anything to counter that dark propaganda that they live in and that they operate in.
I think the policy of the Democrats was ignore it and it'll go away. Ignore it and let's just stay positive instead of being on the same plane that they were on, which was nasty, like you said, nasty and dark. I think she just tried to keep it positive, And
you can do that, but you have to address and just
at least say this is not true. That's not true. This is the reality of what the school is saying, right?
Yes. So and I mean, I this is the first time since I can remember. My first time voting was voting for president for Jimmy Carter, and never have I ever, and especially since I had made that switch, Republicans to actually align with her. There was a unification that was taking place in this country. Liz Cheney was out campaigning feverishly for her. Feverishly. You've never seen so many Republicans saying, you know what? I'm not going down this path with this man this time. No way.
Again.
They're like, no, we're not doing this. We're not doing this. We're not doing this. And I was just so pleased that it was like, wow, finally, this might be the turn that this country needs and has been waiting for. This could have been a brand new awakening and beginning for the United States. It really could have been. And instead,
but the men could not see a woman.
They could not.
And you said this in the book. If they didn't vote for Clinton, Hillary Clinton, they weren't going to vote for Kamala Harris.
But she ran such a far better campaign and raised far more money. People say, "Oh, she didn't have enough time," and I disagree with that. I commended her on the grace and integrity that she defended Biden when he had that meltdown. Anderson Cooper tried to destroy her and get her to be like, we got to get rid of him. And she was like, yo, there's no way that She had so much class.
She defended him vigorously. She did.
Vigorously. And it was like, man, it was like respect.
Yeah.
It was ultimate respect. And I was like, if we were doing politics like this, we would be a country that could lead and be an example for the world. And that's how I looked at it. And so I was very disappointed.
So how do you feel about your party now? You said in the book.
Oh, please.
How do you feel about that party?
I will say this. And there's a group that's rising up and that there's a group that say that they're never Trump. And I'm on record as never, ever Trump.
Oh, Lord.
And I can't see how our good friend, former President Obama was playing footsies with him at Jimmy Carter's funeral. I'm like,
that didn't mean nothing. I
don't care. You see Michelle did not go. She's like, I'm not even doing that.
You know what she said? She said she's protecting her peace at all costs. I get it. I get it. So look,
You know.
y'all, we gonna have to roll out, but
Yes, ma'am.
y'all need to get this book. He talks about South Africa compared to New Bern, Alabama. That's a good chapter 2. You talk about black males, dichotomy, black invention.
The dichotomy.
It's an excellent book.
Thank you so much.
I gotta give it to you. You did the thing on this one.
This is my first book as a doctor too, as Dr. Peter Sherill. I did my work on it. I went to work.
You did. You went to work on this one, and like I said, if it doesn't do it, and I was kind of chuckling because I said the people that need to read this book will never read this book.
Oh, you'd be surprised. They might read this one.
Okay, we gonna see then. We gonna see.
You know, this beautiful beginning for this, to have the opportunity to speak with you. I'm glad that you had the opportunity to go through it and understand it. And but you know, the main part of the book is they chose the title. They chose Barabbas, but the image is on the cross.
Right. It's democracy, freedom, women's rights,
reproductive rights.
Yes.
All that has been crucified.
Yes. It has been.
You know,
it really has
when
been.
you choose Barabbas, the wrong things get crucified.
Yeah. Excellent book. Tell folks how they can learn more about you. How can they get this excellent book?
Of course, you can go to Amazon. It's on all platforms. Thanks to my what is it, Gen Z, whatever, you know, that has the Audible version, the ebook version. The print version is on Amazon, Google Books, Barnes and Nobles, Apple.com, and Ingram Sparks, and all the affiliates that are with them. So they can easily get the book. Or just put They Chose Barabbas.
Oh my gosh, it's a great book. It's not what you think. It is an awesome book, one of the best that I have read. Like I said, you worked on this one. Dr. Peter Sherill joins us today. Thank you so much for just taking out time. You know, we could talk for 2 hours, 3 hours about this book.
Oh yes, this book right here.
Y'all have to go out and get this one, okay?
Yes,
thank you so much for joining us.
And thank you. I really appreciate and respect and feel honored to have the opportunity to be on your show. Thank you so much. Hope to speak to you again soon.
Thanks so much for joining me for Good News. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, you can reach out to me at goodnews@thepgnetwork.org and catch Good News on pgntv.org. I'll see you next time, y'all, with some good news. God bless.